But first, I do want to start today with the stimulus and the Federal Reserve. I think the big news of the morning is that Fed Chief Jerome Powell is going to be speaking to the House of Representatives a little bit later today. He is expected to say some not so good things about the economy. So we've already got a preview of what he will say in front of the House of Representatives, the House Financial Services Committee today. And, look, he's already pulled out a ton of tools in the Federal Reserve's tool belt. He's going to deliver remarks today, and he's expected to say, we actually have quotes from him before his speech. It's like him handing his speech over, so we get to see a little bit of what he's going to say. He's expected to say that we are in extraordinarily uncertain efforts right now, uncertain times, and we don't know our ability to control this virus. He thinks it all hinges on our ability to control this virus, what will happen in our economy. So he's expected to say this. I'll read some exact comments here. Output and employment remain far below their pre-pandemic levels for the economy. The path forward for the economy is extraordinarily uncertain and will depend in large part on our success in containing the virus, he says. A full recovery is unlikely until people are confident that it's safe to re-engage in a broad range of activities, he added. He said the path forward will also depend on the policy actions taken at all levels of the government to provide relief and to support the recovery for as long as needed. He said we need to build on our recent momentum that we've had. We've seen obviously a good amount of people going back to work, but he said we need to focus on the path of this virus right now. He said many businesses are opening their doors, hiring is picking up, and spending is increasing. Employment moved higher, he says, and consumer spending rebounded strongly in May. He said, we've entered an important new phase and have done so sooner than expected. While this bounce back in economic activity is welcome, it also presents new challenges, notably the need to keep the virus in check. So he keeps coming back to this idea of the virus and its massive spreading. So yes, reopening efforts right now being slammed. Of course, we heard from Gavin Newsom. We're going to hear from Governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, about their closing up. They're closing up restaurants and bars and water parks, and all of that stuff is getting closed down again. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. He goes on to say, and these are the final points that I wanted to make, and I think this is important. He said, in March, we lowered our policy interest rate to near zero, and we expect to maintain interest rates at this level until we're confident that the economy has weathered recent events and is on track to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. He said we will closely monitor developments and are prepared to adjust our plans as appropriate to support our goals. That, again, Fed Chair Jerome Powell talking about using all the tools in their tool belt. He did go on to say one other point that I'm going to mention here and paraphrase. He said we used all these tools to help stabilize the economy. Once this is done, those tools will go back in our tool belt, into our Batman utility belt, and we will not use them unless we need to. That's an important point. People were worried and wondering, well, how long will the Fed be buying up all of these junk bonds from businesses, right? We saw them take a huge stake in Walmart. They bought up tons of Walmart debt. They're buying up debt left and right from these big companies. Will they continue to do that? And his answer basically was no, that at some point this will stop. Once we're able to get out of this, we will put those tools away. Well, right now we're facing massive problems for evictions and foreclosure forbearance on mortgages. When will people, are people going to actually get caught up and start to pay their mortgages? Will people start to be able to pay their rent anytime soon? Will there be any sort of government assistance for that? Now, you recall that he has called on Congress a couple of times, basically, to pass more stimulus. This question was asked yesterday of Kayleigh McEnany. She's the White House press secretary. It's a little hard to understand the reporter's speaking. He's speaking, of course, from behind a mask. So it's a little like this, where he's trying to talk to Kayleigh McEnany on the... So it sounds like a little bit like the teacher from the Peanuts show, But anyway, what he's asking about is infrastructure and phase 4. What is the White House planning right now? Can you give us any insight, Kayleigh? What is the president working on? And it's interesting to hear this new strategy from the White House. They're basically pointing the finger at Democrats, saying, we're waiting for you guys to come to the table. Okay, listen.
The president's been talking about this big infrastructure push. I'm curious if we're ever going to get a look at the proposal that DOT has been working on. And then secondly, curious if you could give us a little info on how the Phase 4 negotiations are going. Do you get a sense that Congress is open to the back to work bonus that the president said he's in favor of?
I don't have any updates for you on Phase 4 or infrastructure, but the president has mentioned for the last 3 years he's very keen on Democrats coming to the table and working with us on infrastructure. He's keen on in a Phase 4 seeing a payroll tax holiday, which helps low-wage workers and those who need it most. These are real effective measures that could help the American people, but the onus is really on Democrats to come to the negotiating table.
Well, is there any...
So the onus is on Democrats to come to the negotiating table. Okay, and maybe you're right, and I know that there hadn't been much appetite from the Democrats on big infrastructure right now. And there's a lot of reason for that. There's a lot of economists that believe that a big infrastructure plan won't really bear fruit for years to come. Like we need a influx of cash and capital into the system right now, and shovel-ready projects. We know how that went before. I think the Democrats, went through this with President Obama when they got slammed for shovel-ready projects that weren't ready. Solyndra and all of these other things that Obama administration got slammed for with their stimulus package back in the day. But look, let's be honest. Democrats have been out in front. They've been pushing Republicans repeatedly to get another stimulus in place. Bernie Sanders just a few weeks ago calling the Senate a do-nothing Senate. What is this leadership doing? The House has already passed the HEROES Act. Say what you will about it. Yes, there's a lot of pork in there. Yes, there's a lot of bloat in it. But there's a lot of pieces that they could pull out, cobble together, and pass. And we do know that some of those big pieces are on the table, like that additional stimulus check, that additional $1,200 for an additional stimulus. Those are in the mix right now and under consideration, as we mentioned yesterday, $1,200 direct payments. Also, what you heard Kayleigh say there, a payroll tax holiday will be in there, liability protection. Another big question is whether or not we would see student loan forgiveness. This would be huge. Now, Peter Morici his name's been popping up quite a bit lately. I've interviewed him quite a bit in years past. He's a very smart economist. And he wrote a piece yesterday in Market Watch called "The Fed Needs to Deploy Digital Dollars to Support the Recovery." And he said the fastest way to get stimulus in the hands of consumers is to credit their bank accounts. So would the Federal Reserve maybe later today take on that question? Will they hear from Congress? Will Jerome Powell hear from people in the House of Representatives when he testifies today on this idea of giving Americans an actual checking account from the Federal Reserve that they can re-up every month with like $2,000 per person? Now, this has been floated by a couple of members of Congress. Now, economist Peter Morici is saying this is one of the best ways for us to shore up our economy right now. And he also said another thing. He did an interview with the Associated Press, Peter did, and he talked about another big thing we can do is stop playing political football right now. Stop playing politics with these stimulus plans and get like student loan forgiveness. That would be a huge piece. Listen to Peter Morici, who wrote that opinion piece. Take a listen.
And that we're only 4 months into a crisis, 3 months into a crisis, and unemployment is already starting to come down. That tells us that we're doing better than we thought. We're not doing as well as we could or should, but we're doing better than we thought. There's a lot of things that we could be doing, I believe, if we're going to be spending trillions of dollars that may be more worthwhile than some of the vote chasing that's going on Capitol Hill from both parties. One of them is student debt forgiveness. The other is assistance to state and local governments who've been lambasted by this thing.
So those are some of the big issues right now, obviously state and local governments, and getting money into the hands of, some of the student loan forgiveness. I was having a conversation yesterday with a mom who, she's lived in England for like 10 years, and she was from Argentina, and she just couldn't understand Americans and their student loan debt. She was really confounded by it. And I was having to explain to her, that's how we do it. You go to college in America for the first 2 years, you're repeating 2 years of college of what you took in high school, and you're paying for it. You're taking the same classes that you took in high school again, so that these big institutions can make tons of money and saddle our young people with massive amounts of student loan debt. Well, he's onto something. because we now have a proposal from Congress. This is a new proposal that has just come out, hit the floor of the House. Representative Bobby Rush has proposed a student recovery eligibility for low-income individuals to exact funds. They have to come up with these acronyms. It's called the Student Relief Act, and it's RELIEF, and it would give $1,200 stimulus checks to low-income students who received, and to all students who received Pell Grants. The federal Pell Grant program is a need-based financial aid program given to low-income undergraduates and some post-baccalaureate students to promote secondary education. Students who qualify would be given these grants based on their financial need. He says, Bobby Rush, seen right there, he says, unimaginably, many of these students were ineligible to receive a direct financial assistance payment through the CARES Act, which would have provided them with their families with much needed relief during the crisis. So that is a new proposal today, $1,200 stimulus checks to all students who receive Pell Grants. And the broader question this morning is, how well did the first stimulus plan work? How well did it work, the CARES Act that rolled out at the end of March? How well did it work? There's been a lot of speculation that, well, maybe it didn't work well enough, or it was too slow, or, well, how well did it work? Well, now we have our first data this morning from the University of Columbia, or Columbia University. They found that without the passage of the CARES Act, our poverty level in the United States would have surged to 16%. Instead, because we passed the CARES Act, our level of poverty stayed the same, unchanged, thanks to the stimulus. So look where it plummeted, and we were able to get back out of this. Low-income households there in purple, high-income households in blue, and this was spending by these households. Because of the CARES Act, we're able to lift us out and keep people out of poverty, which, my friends, in my mind, is all the more reason to pass another stimulus. Now we have proof that the first one worked, and now we're about to hit this massive cliff of evictions and mortgage forbearance, where people are trying to have 3-month window to pay them, and now that 3-month window is up. Unemployment benefits set to run out in a few weeks. So what will we see? We do know, of course, the 3 different proposals that we're looking at right now is payroll tax holiday, $1,200 direct stimulus payment, and some sort of employment benefit to get you back to work. $450 is one of the proposals. $400 is another from a bipartisan think tank. $400 from this group of economists think that might be the most likely scenario. So instead of $600, it would get dropped to $400. So that is the very latest on that piece of it. I want to tell you about some breaking news on the PPP program now. There is still, at this hour, $134 billion available in the PPP loan program for small businesses, under 500 employees. Well, guess what? That deadline is today to get it. So if you have not applied for it and you're a small business, you're done. Today is your last chance to apply for it. So what happens with that money? Well, there's a bunch of different proposals right now, one of which has come from Marco Rubio, to extend this package, so that this package would allow businesses to get a second loan. Did you hear me? So if you're a small business and you have, right now it's fewer than 500 employees, but the proposal on the floor would be reduce it down to 100 employees or less. 100 employees or less, you would be allowed to, under this new proposal, apply for a second PPP forgivable loan. Grant, not even a loan, a grant. This is huge breaking news. This is huge, folks. For so many businesses that have been on the verge of collapse or have collapsed or had to shut their doors, and they wish they would have had access to just an extra bit of capital to get some of their employees back, keep the utilities paid, keep the rent paid at their business so that they could get through all of this. And we're not out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination. Now we're heading back into the woods. So a new round of PPP loan program options and bills. There's 2 different ones floating around Congress right now, and they have bipartisan support. Look, this money is already sitting there. This money has already been allocated for businesses, $134 billion, and it wasn't used up. So what to do? If you're Congress, you hate saving money, right? There's no way you're going to say, all right, no one used it, we're just going to put it back in the kitty. No, come on. That money's already been allocated for businesses, and it's an opportunity to save other small businesses. So again, Democrats would want to remove that 500 employee limit, which pushes it up there. Let's be honest, 500 employees, that's not a small business. So it would lower it to 100 employees, and you would have a chance to apply for a second PPP loan. A second, that's amazing. And what that would do is cover up to 60%, I think it was changed halfway through, but 60% of payroll, and then 40% for utilities and expenses and overhead. That was reduced. It was, I think, 75% for payroll, and then they reduced that in an amendment that came out a few weeks ago. So again, new PPP program could be coming very, very soon. That money is set to expire today, and there's bipartisan support from Congress. I think that they could pass something before the July 4th recess with regards to a new round of PPP loans. So if you know anyone, you know any businesses right now that are suffering, that have not applied for it, tell them they got to do it today. And if you know of a business that got a PPP loan that's keeping their lights on, let them know that a second one might be available here in the next week or so. And I would recommend highly too, is that a lot of people ran into huge problems trying to work with their banks, trying to work with Wells Fargo or Chase or Bank of America, some of the big banks. My advice to you would be ignore them. Do not work with those banks. Work with a fintech company. Like PayPal was doing PPP loans, and people were able to get them like that if they used PayPal. I use one called, I use a bank, it's a digital bank. They have no stores, called Novo Bank. I'll put a link in the description below if anyone wants to try it. It's a great business checking account. They don't have any brick and mortar stores, so they don't have to deal with all of that infrastructure. And they were able, they actually sent out emails. Novo sent out emails basically saying, hey, we know many of you are having trouble working with your other bank to try to get PPP loans. We're set up, we're ready to go. And PayPal did the same thing. So it's the age of fintech companies. You know, they don't have to be saddled with all of these brick and mortar bank stores. So use one of them if you need to apply, because a lot of people were getting hit hard dealing with Wells Fargo and Chase and all of them. They were dragging their feet, and it was a huge mess. So again, take advantage of that. Also, folks, those Main Street Lending Program is still available from the Federal Reserve. The Main Street Lending Program, you can take out loans, a minimum of $250,000 for your business. You also have access to the EIDL loans. So there's a lot of different loans available right now. If you just do the homework, fill out those applications and get that money, because it's available right now. So take advantage of that. So that is the very latest on the stimulus news. That's the very latest on the PPP loan program, and what we expect to hear from the Federal Reserve later today. We'll be bringing that news to you when we have it from the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. And if he makes any big news from the event, we will definitely bring that to you. So be safe to each other, be kind. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel and being part of our great community here. Thank you everyone who joined our membership program, clicked on the little join button, and became a channel member. So thank you for that.